He dug out the next morning, and, during a lull in shelling due to the Kraken, marched over to Bravo Company's mortar pits with Bo and Colucci, where they etched "fuck you" onto the tail fins of 81mm shells the gun crew would fire that day. Tail fins of mortar rounds almost never exploded, so their love notes were sure to be read. Later on, when the fog began to lift, they gathered outside their trench and thrust their fists into the air with middle fingers extended. Thus, the first thing enemy forward observers saw that morning after laying a horrific bombardment on the base was 3 Marines flipping them off. They held their pose and yelled,
"Ho Chi Minh for sheep!"
When the first rounds whistled overhead, they dove into their foxholes so broke up they couldn't talk, cackling. Weeks of suffering purged in a spasm of laughter. They stayed down until another break in the shelling came. David shuffled over to Colucci's fighting hole with Bo behind him. Colucci lay on his back in the middle of the trench, staring up at the gunmetal sky, his flak jacket open. Small clods of red clay clung to his bloom of chest hair like berries on a bush. They hopped into the trench and sat down beside him, but said nothing. Bo sighed, and David shook his head. Only Colucci gave voice to the creeping wistfulness that overtook their earlier mirth.
"I want to go to a game at Yankee Stadium again," he said. "Smell the peanuts and Cracker Jack and hear Bob Shepard on the PA. Now batting for the Yankees, the center fielder, number 7, Mickey Mantle, number 7. That's how he always does it, says the numbers twice. Been doing it like that for 16 years. Every time, exactly the same way. And I want to sink my teeth into a ballpark hot dog. The relish and mustard all mixed together, smeared on my chin. Vendors all around me shouting, 'Cold beer here! Cold beer!' I want to hear the crack of the bat and see the ball arcing toward the fence, wondering if it's going to make it out. I want that to be all I worry about. A ball making it over a fence."
He sat up and looked from David to Bo with a mournful face, like a foundling in search of his mother.
"I want to see the Yankees again."
Bo grinned.
"I can just see you, Rock. Yankees hat on, wiping the foam from your face after taking a long pull off a cold one. That's great, man. That's just great."
David nodded in recognition of the yearning that resided within every Marine up and down the line, a desperate longing to do the one thing, besides getting laid, that 13 months in Nam made them want to do. A different thing for each one of them. He socked Colucci's shoulder and volunteered his own secret desire. "I want to walk across campus when the mall is deserted and it starts to snow. Plump, beautiful snowflakes floating down from the sky, silent and cool and white. That's what I want, the kiss of a snowflake on my cheek." Colucci tugged his mustache. "Solid." He turned to Bo. "How about you? What do you want to do when you make it back?" Bo lifted the brim of his helmet and gave a dreamy smile. "I want to shoot the hooch on a hot summer day." David looked at Colucci, who wore the same baffled expression he did. "You want to down shots of moonshine?" David asked. Bo chuckled. "Shooting the hooch means going inner tubing down the Chattahoochee River. We start off north of Atlanta, not far from where I live, and float down river in inner tubes. Blue Georgia sky, greenish tint to the water, oak and chestnut branches hanging over the river, and a sniff of honeysuckle in the air. So gorgeous and peaceful, but with a purpose to it, a righteous purpose. There's even a famous poem about it, the Song of the Chattahoochee." David had never heard of it. Neither had Colucci, judging by the blank look on his face. Bo stared off into triple canopy jungle and spoke in a low, lyrical voice.
Out of the hills of Habersham, down the valleys of Hall, I hurry and maim to reach the plain, run the rapid and leap the fall. Split at the rock and together again, accept my bed or narrow or wide, and flee from folly on every side. With the lover's pain to attain the plain, far from the hills of Habersham, far from the valleys of Hall.
David could almost hear the trill and chirr of the forest, the sough of wind through its branches. "It's beautiful," he said. "But what do you mean a righteous purpose? How can a river be righteous?"
"'Cause it's fulfilling its duty to nature, bringing sustenance and energy and beauty to the land it runs through. That's its purpose, its duty, like this is our purpose, our duty, to our land."
The distant pop of artillery and whiz of incoming shells ended their session, but later that day, David used his K-bar knife to etch an inscription onto his canteen that had begun to show up all over the combat base. "For those who fight for it, life has a special flavor the protected never know."